because it's time for a new Spider-Man review.
Okay, where we left off the last time with the Amazing Spider-Man was that the Hitman hired to help kidnap Jameson falls from the Statue of Liberty and dies. And then Liz Allen runs away, and then Harry killed his therapist and then decided to return to being the Green Goblin. Then the Spectacular Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Razorback, and Flash Thompson are captured and chained to a wall in some kind of dungeony room with a bomb. So, here we go. Let's start with Spectacular Spider-Man number 14. Through a miracle of web shooting accuracy, the gang manages to escape from the dungeon and not get caught in the explosion of the bomb. And then Spider-Man and the gang travel to the big Legion of Light rally where Hatemonger plans to unleash his hate on the world, and they run into him in the bowels of the stadium, and Hatemonger uses some kind of mind trick thing to make them fight each other, and Flash sneaks up behind Hatemonger, breaks his concentration, and pulls off his mask, revealing some kind of man-beast. And then Spider-Man and Razorback are woken from their trance. And then in the next issue, number 15, Man-Beast knocks out Razorback and Flash and attempts to use Spider-Man in his plot to fill the world with hate. He tries to collapse part of the stadium, killing hundreds of people, but Spider-Man and Razorback save anybody from getting hurt. And then Spider-Man, Razorback, and Flash run off to their own separate fights. And Spider-Man destroys the Man-Beast during his message of hate that he's spreading. And everybody under his trance is woken up. Let's go over to Amazing Spider-Man, number 176. Aunt May goes to the hospital again for heart problems. And the Green Goblin shows up at Harry and Flash's apartment. And then Spider-Man fights him, and Green Goblin throws Flash out the window. And then in the next issue, Spider-Man saves Flash, as you can expect. And it turns out that Harry didn't actually kill his psychiatrist a few issues ago, but he only beat him up and kidnapped him. The Green Goblin crashes a meeting of criminal leaders that's happening in the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center. And just as Spider-Man sneaks through the vent, Green Goblin is talking about how he knows Spider-Man's identity. And also Aunt May has another heart attack or something. And so, they're frantically trying to reach Peter, but it's not at the phone. In the next issue, Goblin promises Silvermane and the other crime bosses that he will bring Spider-Man to them in hopes to become the leader of the criminal underworld. The doctors need to do surgery on Aunt May, but need to wait for a consent form to be signed by Peter. After a long while of trying, MJ finally gets a call through to Peter. As he races to the hospital as Spider-Man, Green Goblin attacks him and captures him. And in the next issue, Silvermane's men attack Green Goblin, damaging his glider, making him drop Spider-Man. Green Goblin goes back to his hideout, and Spider-Man finally gets to the hospital and finds out Aunt May's surgery went well and that she'll be okay. And then the Goblin attacks Silvermane at a theater, and Peter goes to fight him while Aunt May's anesthesia wears off. The fight ends with Goblin, Silvermane, and Spider-Man falling from near the ceiling of the theater to their certain deaths. And the man Goblin had tied up at his hideout finally breaks free and removes the sack from his head, revealing himself to be Harry. So, who's the Goblin? And then in the next issue, Silvermane hits the ground, barely surviving, while Goblin stuns Spider-Man and carries him off to his hideout. Harry wakes up and decides to battle the Green Goblin by donning the second Green Goblin suit himself. Spider-Man is fighting the psychiatrist Green Goblin while Harry shows up and the two Green Goblins start fighting each other. So yeah, the Green Goblin is actually Harry's psychiatrist. So, and he's been getting secrets from him. Anyway, the Harry Green Goblin and the psychiatrist Green Goblin are fighting, and Harry finds the Green Goblin repulsive and says that part of him is dead now, ripping off the costume. Psychiatrist accidentally blows himself up, and Peter walks Harry back to his house, where they find an apologetic Liz waiting. Alright, and then in Spectacular Spider-Man, number 16, the Beetle tries to divert police attention so he can break into the police station and steal $1 million from evidence. Spider-Man and an action-seeking cop manage to stop him. Pretty interesting issue. I liked it. But I just don't like the Beetle. I don't know how the Beetle manages to show up in good issues when I really just don't care about him at all. Anyway, number 17, Peter gets sent to California to take photos for the news story about a super team called the Champions splitting up. Champions is another comic about, a group of superheroes teaming up. And yeah, so a superhero called Angel is the only champion left. And Spider-Man fights some bandaged guy in a wheelchair who's called Rampage, who's blackmailing Angel, in a sense. Well, the guy in the wheelchair has a proxy in like an Iron Man kind of suit. It's the Rampage suit that he usually wears, but you have to have somebody else wear it. And he fights for him at the push of a button. And Angel blows up the guy in the wheelchair. And the proxy turns out to be Iceman, who shreds his armor but is still under the previous orders of the wheelchair man to kill Spider-Man. And yeah, Angel doesn't want to fight him because it's his friend. And yeah, because Iceman was in the Champions. In the next issue, it starts out, there's a big fight, some flashbacks to exactly how it led up to all this. And then eventually Spider-Man snaps Bobby, or Iceman, out of his hypnotic trance and by hurling him into a scalding hot car wash. And he doesn't have any news photos for the Daily Bugle because all his cameras broke during his fights. So, and then there's a page or so of Flash and Shashan, his love interest from Vietnam, talking about their love for each other on the Empire State University campus. And also some weird setup for a future White Tiger storyline. And then, yeah, ends with Peter's plane home being rocked by some nearby lightning in a prison cell on the ground below that's mysteriously disintegrated. And then in the next issue, the Lightmaster sends the enforcers to the Coffee Bean, a local coffee shop at the campus, to lure Spider-Man into a fight. And then Spider-Man easily defeats them, and one of the students in the Coffee Bean was Hector Ayala, aka the White Tiger. And as everybody else left the diner, Hector remained in case Spider-Man needed help, but he didn't. And then Lightmaster, watching TV, suspects Hector to be the secret identity of Spider-Man. And in the next issue, Lightmaster attempts to reveal Hector as Spider-Man on national television, or local television, maybe? I don't remember. Spider-Man shows up and gives Hector back his amulets that allow him to change into the White Tiger because he dropped them earlier. And he reveals his identity on TV. His White Tiger identity, obviously. And there's a fight, and the Lightmaster ends up overloading the city's power and causing a blackout. And without lights around, he's unable to maintain his molecular structure, and he disintegrates. Alright, then in issue 181 of Amazing Spider-Man. This issue is solely a recap of events from the beginning of Spider-Man until now. I can understand why they do something like this, because, new readers might not have seen that one. And also, this was during a time of staff change. One writer, like the previous writer for like a year or more, was leaving, and then there was a new one coming in. So, I don't really have a problem with it. I'm fine with it. Well, I do have one problem. At one point, they list a bunch of villains that Spider-Man has fought. Kingpin, Vulture, Chameleon, Kraven, Doc Ock, etc. They have like all their pictures around and stuff, like a Mega Man X kind of, thing where you choose the... Anyway, they even have slightly more obscure and unpopular ones like Mirage, the Beetle, Stegron, the Dinosaur Man, and Will-O-the-Wisp. But you know who they don't have? The Jackal. He's not mentioned anywhere in the entire issue. Not once. And let me tell you, it pisses me off to no end. The Jackal and his Clone Saga storyline was one of my favorite stories so far out of all the issues I've read. By far, like, definitely top 5, maybe favorite of all time. And the Jackal is so rarely used anywhere in the Spider-Man universe. Screw you, Mark! Anyway, the next issue, Spider-Man tries to defeat the Rocket Racer, a villain that appeared in an issue a long time ago. He only appeared in the beginning. It was like Spider-Man was in mid-battle with him and then, caught him, sent him to the police within like a few pages. And then the Rocket Racer is blackmailing Jason Wheel for more money, and Jackson hired him to steal some evidence for him. Just in case you don't know who Rocket Racer is, he rides around on a rocket-powered skateboard and has other rocket-related gizmos. Then the Rocket Racer gets away, and Peter goes to MJ's apartment and proposes. The next issue, Peter goes to visit Aunt May, and he senses something before he enters her room and changes into Spider-Man quick. And then when he enters the room, he doesn't see any villains or really anything wrong at all. But Rocket Racer is actually in his civvies, visiting his mom in the next bed. And they have a fight, and that leads them out the window. And Jackson Wheel from earlier makes a giant wheel contraption that he sits in and it goes down the road, and goes after Rocket Racer for revenge. And Spider-Man defeats him, but Rocket Racer gets away. Aunt May is taken to critical care after having another seizure from seeing Spider-Man. And then MJ declines Peter's proposal and hopes they can stay friends. And then, Spectacular Spider-Man number 21. Scorpion comes after Jameson for revenge. Jameson originally created Scorpion to defeat Spider-Man, and Spider-Man fights him and beats the crap out of him. And end story. And then MJ is still set in her decision against marrying Peter, but they kind of remain in a relationship, I guess. I don't know. And then in Amazing Spider-Man 184, Betty Brant returns to New York and tells Peter that she left Ned and wants to start something with Peter. And yeah. And then Peter's about to graduate college, and there's this kid, Philip Chang, at his college being tormented by some dragon gangs. And Spider-Man goes to try and sort it out. And they get the better of him, and the White Dragon, the leader of all the gangs, drops him into a vat of burning oil because Chang refused to join any of the gangs. And then in the next issue, Spider-Man escapes from the oil vat via a webbing miracle and fights and defeats the White Dragon. Then he goes to his graduation ceremony, but his name's not called, and he finds out he's missing a gym credit and has to make it up during summer to graduate. And yeah, then in Spectacular Spider-Man number 22, Moon Knight is looking for the leader of the Magia, which is like the Spider-Man's version, or I guess Marvel in general's version of the Mafia. While he's interrogating a member of the Magia to find out who the leader is, Spider-Man starts a fight with him, and because he thinks he's trying to kill the guy. Once again, Spider-Man just starts throwing punches without first talking or anything. Ridiculous. Cyclone shows up. Spider-Man met him in France when Jameson was kidnapped a while back. And yeah. Moon Knight's pretty awesome, I'm going to say. I like him. Anyway, in the next issue, 23, Cyclone thinks that he killed Spider-Man and Moon Knight and leaves, but obviously they are both still alive. And Moon Knight knows of a Magia meeting, and they figure out where it's going to be, and they crash the party. And they fight a bunch of thugs and defeat Cyclone. But Big M, the leader of Magia, manages to avoid being seen by anyone. And yeah, another thing about Moon Knight is that he has many, many different identities. I like Moon Knight. Pretty cool. Has a really awesome costume and everything. I like it. Anyway, Amazing Spider-Man number 186. Police find evidence that clears Spider-Man of being a suspect in the murder of George Stacy and Norman Osborn from a long time back, and he no longer has a warrant out for his arrest. And no sooner does this happen than the Chameleon tries to discredit him by changing into an old woman and later a cop and make it look like Spider-Man is assaulting innocent people. But Spider-Man clears that up, and it's all good. And then, 187. Some movie star's kid gets bit by a rat and gets the plague. And he's being transported to some care facility and gets kidnapped by Electro. Spider-Man and Captain America work together to get the kid back. Electro overdoses on electricity from a generator and explodes. Yep. And, Spectacular Spider-Man number 24. Peter's friends take him out dancing, and the musician turns out to be a guy who hypnotizes his audience so he can steal their things. And Spider-Man makes some earplugs out of webbing and beats the crap out of Hypno Hustler, which is his name, and all becomes well again. And I must say the Hypno Hustler goes down as one of the top 5 or 10 dumbest Spider-Man villains ever. I'm not sure if he's worse than Kangaroo. It's a close one. Yeah. And then the next issue, Carrion, a villain, unsuccessfully tries to convince the Magia to let him defeat Spider-Man for some unknown compensation or something. Carrion's pretty terrifying, I must say. He looks like a bag of bones with raggy, ripped up clothes, and bullets can go through him because he's like a ghost or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about him, but he's a good villain, I think. And I'm sure he'll be back soon. The White Tiger breaks up a gang trying to break into a car, and it has nothing to do with the story at all. It's just something the White Tiger did. I don't know. I guess I missed the part where this became the The Amazing Spider-Man and the White Tiger. But yeah, Spider-Man tries to stop the Magia's attempt to rob a bank, and the Masked Marauder is the leader of the Magia. He's the Big M. And he gets the better of Spider-Man for a cliffhanger. And will Spider-Man die in the next issue? We will see. I don't know. I'm on the edge of my seat for that one. I don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, this year of issues was decent. Some good, some bad. There weren't too many that were really standout awesome. But I did notice one thing. When either Amazing Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man started lacking in quality, the other one made up for it. Like, there was always one comic, like either Amazing Spider-Man or Spectacular Spider-Man had 4-star issues, while the other one might have had, 3 or 2. Like, whenever one was slacking, the other one picked up the slack. And I just found that interesting. And it's all different writers, and in both comics, it's different writers, so I don't know. It's weird. But, yeah. Pretty good year. We'll see what happens next in issues 188 through 199 of Amazing Spider-Man and 26 through 37 of Spectacular Spider-Man. So yeah, see you then.